In the quiet hum of the classroom, the air felt thick with the buzz of pencils scratching against paper. The clock ticked steadily, counting down the final moments of a history test. Princess Charlotte sat poised at her desk, her eyes fixed on the paper in front of her. Among the questions was, in which year did World War I begin? This test was the last she had to complete before the nationwide junior essay competition, an event she had participated in every year since she learned to read and write. Around her, the other students were absorbed in their work. Some moved quickly through the questions, while others paused, chewing their pens in forced concentration. For most, it was just another test, a challenge in the routine of school. But for Charlotte, this test carried more significance. She knew her performance was scrutinized more than anyone else's. Royalty was never permitted to be mediocre. As she read through the possible answers to the first question, Charlotte's fingers tightened around her pencil. The answers were neatly listed, but her gaze lingered on the first option. It was incorrect, several years off from the correct date. Her heart skipped a beat. Scanning the other options quickly, she realized they all contained the same error. Biting her lip, her mind raced. She was certain of the correct year and understood the implications of letting such a mistake slide. Glancing around, she noticed her classmates deeply engrossed in their work. James Fitzgerald, sitting a few rows away, scribbled hastily, seemingly oblivious to the discrepancy. Charlotte hesitated, debating whether to speak up. Doing so would draw attention to her, and the weight of her royal title pressed heavily on her. Perfection was expected of her, always. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed her pencil down. Resolving to act, she raised her hand slowly, her gaze shifting toward Mr. Thompson, who was by the whiteboard, engrossed in his notes. He glanced over, his expression unreadable. Charlotte's heart beat faster as she waited. "Yes, Charlotte?" Mr. Thompson's voice held a mixture of curiosity and mild amusement, clearly surprised by the interruption. "I think there's an error on the test, sir," Charlotte said, trying to steady her voice. "The years for World War I are incorrect." The room fell silent. Charlotte could feel every pair of eyes on her. Her classmates exchanged glances, some frozen in their seats. James raised an eyebrow, his expression annoyed. Mr. Thompson's face shifted from amusement to a subtle frown. "Are you sure, Charlotte?" he asked, his tone dismissive. "Perhaps you're mistaken. We'll review it later." Charlotte wasn't about to back down. "No, sir, I'm certain." "The year is wrong," she insisted, feeling the tension in the room escalate. It wasn't just about the error, it was about her challenging her teacher in front of everyone. The quiet murmur of disbelief buzzed around her. "Smarty pants strikes again," James muttered under his breath. "She thinks she knows everything." His cold, snarky tone was familiar, but Charlotte ignored him. "And what if she's right, James?" Ellie Parker, Charlotte's friend, countered. "Wouldn't it mean all the other questions could be wrong too?" James snapped back sharply, drawing Mr. Thompson's attention. "Quiet!" Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the room. "And you, James, mind your words." James sank into his seat, silenced. Mr. Thompson turned back to Charlotte, his fingers tapping nervously on his desk. "We'll look into it after class, Charlotte," he said without conviction. "Please continue." But Charlotte wasn't done. She stood firm, her voice steady as she said, "The correct year is 1914, sir. Not 1913, 1924, or any of the other years written here." Meeting Mr. Thompson's gaze, her heart pounded. He held her gaze for a long moment before addressing the class. "All right, everyone," he said, forcing a smile. "Let's wrap up. We'll review the test afterward." The lesson moved on, but Charlotte felt the room's atmosphere shift. Murmurs spread, quiet but palpable, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable. She returned to her paper, trying to focus, but her mind raced. Had she made a mistake? Would this cause trouble? When the bell rang, Charlotte gathered her belongings, ignoring the stares of her classmates. James didn't speak, but his lingering gaze was heavy with judgment. Outside, the sun shone brightly over the courtyard, but Charlotte felt none of its warmth. Usually a place of peace, the courtyard now seemed like a stage where all eyes were on her. She found a quiet bench in the corner, her hands resting on her lap. Reflecting on the morning's events, her boldness in the moment now felt daunting. Mr. Thompson's vague response offered no comfort. Had her actions been necessary, or had she overstepped? What if she got into trouble? Her parents would be disappointed. Her thoughts were interrupted by familiar footsteps. Ellie sat beside her, her gaze soft and understanding. "Are you okay?" Ellie asked, her voice light but tinged with concern. Charlotte sighed, leaning back against the bench. "I don't know, Ellie. I'm not sure I should have said anything. What if they think I was just showing off?" She looked at her friend, searching for reassurance. Ellie smiled warmly, her grin washing away Charlotte's doubts. Bright and charming, Ellie had always been a comforting presence, their bond unaffected by the differences in their upbringings. Ellie had known Charlotte for a few years and had always admired her for her intelligence and kindness. But more than that, she saw Charlotte as a regular person who simply wanted to fit in. Many times, Ellie offered the comfort, acceptance, and true friendship that Charlotte craved. She was also an escape from the demands of royal life, and what's more, Ellie was an intelligent study partner too. Together, they made perfect grades and outperformed rival schools in various competitions. They were truly the power team. "Charlotte, you did the right thing," Ellie said softly. "The test was wrong, and you corrected it. It's not about being perfect, it's about being honest." Her words were simple but powerful, and Charlotte found herself holding on to them. "But what about everyone else?" Charlotte asked. "What if they don't think it's about honesty? What if they just think I'm trying to be better than them?" "Who cares?" Ellie replied, her tone light but serious. "You did what was right. If they can't see that, that's their problem." She nudged Charlotte gently. "And you know what? I think they respect you for it. It's not every day someone calls out a teacher, especially someone like you." Charlotte let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Ellie's words, simple as they were, made her feel lighter. Maybe Ellie was right, maybe this wasn't about looking good, but about doing what was right no matter the cost. Even if some people didn't get it, it didn't matter. The bell rang, signaling the end of the break period, and as they stood to head back to class, Charlotte felt a renewed sense of determination. She couldn't change what had happened, but she could walk forward with her head held high. The next class was history again, but this time, the atmosphere was different. Mr. Thompson had gone to the headmaster to discuss the error Charlotte had pointed out. When the class settled in, the door opened, and the headmaster himself walked in. He was a tall man with a stern face, but there was a hint of respect in his gaze when he looked at Charlotte. "Class, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge a small oversight in today's test," the headmaster said, his voice calm but firm. Princess Charlotte pointed out an error in the year for World War I. She was correct. I commend her for her attention to detail and her courage to speak up. The room fell silent, and Charlotte felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she didn't look down. She didn't need to. This wasn't about seeking validation, this was about standing up for what was right, even when it wasn't easy. As the headmaster spoke, a soft clapping began from the back of the room. It was tentative at first, but as more students joined in, it grew louder. The applause swelled until the entire class rose to give Charlotte a standing ovation. It wasn't just the correction they were applauding, but the courage it took to stand up, to challenge the norm, and to do the right thing when no one else would. Charlotte stood there, caught between pride and surprise. This wasn't how she had imagined it. She had expected reprimands, perhaps even scorn, but instead, she was receiving something much more valuable, respect. As the clapping died down, Charlotte found herself smiling. The weight of the day lifted. She had done what she believed was right, and in the end, that was all that mattered. The school day came to a close, and Charlotte found herself walking out of the building with Ellie by her side. The day had been full of unexpected twists, but as they approached the gates of the school, Charlotte felt lighter. The storm inside her had passed. She had been honest, she had corrected the test error, and she had received a standing ovation for it. What more could she ask for? Later that evening, back at Kensington Palace, Charlotte sat by the window in her room, the lights of the city twinkling below her. Her parents entered the room, the door opening and shutting quietly behind them. They had heard the news. "Well done, Charlotte," Kate, her mother, said warmly, her voice filled with pride. "You did the right thing," her father, Prince William, added, beaming brightly. Of course, William responded in a lofty tone. "I hear everything about you, my little eaglet." Charlotte smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. It wasn't about the standing ovation or the applause, it was about knowing she had done something good, something important. For the first time, she felt that her role as a princess meant more than just wearing a crown. It meant standing up for truth and challenging the norms, even when no one expected her to. In that moment, Charlotte realized something important: leadership wasn't about being perfect. It was about having the courage to speak up, to correct what was wrong, and to be true to who you are. That, she knew, was the most valuable lesson of all. In the days that followed, Charlotte and Ellie immersed themselves in study at the school's library, preparing for the junior essay competition. Charlotte had previously wanted to write about the adverse effects of plastic litter and waste in the oceans, but she changed her mind. She had a better idea, one that would surely win her gold. "The little mistakes teachers make and how they affect students' grades," she scribbled slowly one day at the library, looking up at Ellie. "This title is quite long, isn't it?" she asked, hoping for a sincere response. "There is no such thing as right or wrong, long or short, when it comes to being creative," Ellie started softly. "If it feels right in your heart, then it most certainly is." Charlotte found herself smiling. Sometimes, she wondered if she and Ellie were truly the same age. Ellie was so wise. Anyway, Charlotte kept the title and continued her essay about how even adults and teachers are not above making mistakes. She emphasized the importance of care and caution and encouraged teachers to be more like Mr. Thompson, gentle, courteous, and attentive to the kids and students around them. What do you think of Charlotte's ability to speak up, even when it meant standing up to authority? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire bravery and integrity. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.